U.S. Army Tankodrome, 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 U.S. Army Tankodrome. Welcome to the U.S. Army Tankodrome. In celebration of Armor Week every year, the U.S. Army Tankodrome, officially found on Google as the U.S. Armor and Cavalry Collection at Fort Moore, opens its doors to the public for the weekend with food trucks and different exhibitions and hundreds of tanks and different combat vehicles and gun pieces. This includes getting to hop on and go inside some Army vehicles and to watch an Abrams tank and Bradley fighting vehicle live fire demonstration. The best part being is that it's completely free and open to the public. I've already seen a couple live fires, so that didn't concern me as much, but what was the best part was the Tankodrome, a collection of hundreds of tanks captured or acquired from Germany, Japan, the USSR with a specialty in US tanks, including ones that were built but never made it out of the prototype stage. If you like looking at tanks for cheap, this is definitely the event to be. People came from all over for this event, including the UK, Germany, and even California. Anyways, there are a lot of cool vehicles at this place, but this is my top 5 tanks that I found to be the most interesting at the U.S. Army Tankodrome. Number 5, the Mark 8 Heavy Tank. This classic was a joint production between the British and Americans for the end of World War I, and was meant to give improvements to the original Mark 6 while making it American size to take advantage of American industrial capacity. It had a 12-man crew, including a mechanic, and it was 34 feet long so that it could easily traverse trenches and weighed about 39 tons. This tank is the second largest operational tank in history after the French Char 2C. The production difficulties in making such a large tank led to it not being available to actually fight in World War I. The U.S. Army continued to use them, however, until 1932 when they were finally phased out for tanks that were a bit more maneuverable and less prone to overheating. Also, the chassis of this tank is what the tank used in Indiana Jones and Last Crusade is modeled off of, with the turret receiving a bit of a Hollywood treatment. The Mark 8 tank that they have at the Tankodrome is in amazingly good condition, and the camera doesn't do it justice for how big and massive this tank actually is. Number 4, Main Battle Tank 70. This tank was one of the immediate predecessors of the modern American Abrams tank. The Main Battle Tank 70 was a joint project between the United States and West Germany in an attempt to catch up to Soviet tank design. It was unique as it had a crew of 3 instead of 4. All 3 crew members were in the turret of the tank, which blew my mind. The driver's portion of the tank would be able to remain stationary as the rest of the turret rotated independently. Super sick. It had an autoloader and was very fast for its time with a max speed of 35 miles per hour. I also was super intrigued by this enclosed third crew member station with the turret facing rearwards. This tank was also very low in terms of height, which you can see here with the hull only coming up to my waist, no doubt to try and give it a lower profile. The whole project suffered from conflicting interests between the Germans and Americans, with costs going over 5 times what was projected. The Germans would pull out of the project, and the Americans, after building 6 prototype models, would wind up canceling the project as well. Based on the valuable experience of developing this project, however, the Germans would go on to develop the Leopard 2, and the Americans to develop the Abrams tank that we know and love today. Number 3, the T-69 medium tank prototype. I had to put this one here because of just how weird and interesting the turret design looks. Developed by the US military around 1955, the T-69 was unique in terms of gun and turret design. It had a 90mm auto-loading gun with an 8-round magazine that could fire 33 rounds per minute. Compare that to the Abrams today, which could fire around 5 to 10 120mm rounds per minute based on the loader speed. The reason why the turret looks like that is a unique way of providing mobility to the main gun. The lower part, or collar, provides horizontal rotation, and the separate upper portion allows the entire turret, along with the main gun, to move up and down, which provides more vertical displacement for the main gun. What I thought was cool was how the turret seems sculpted to the main gun and the rest of the turret to allow an interesting method of deflection. Unfortunately for the T-69 though, this super technical design overall led to a very high rate of component failure, leading it to not even being able to be tested fully. This is the only prototype that exists because it was deemed unsatisfactory for service, with the project being cancelled in 1958. Number 2, the T-28 Super Heavy Tank. Now this right here is a big boy. You can see it has not just one, but 2 sets of tracks on both sides to support its weight of 95 tons. Compare that to the Abrams tank today, which weighs approximately 70 tons. Imagine how horrible it would be to do maintenance on this bad boy. The T-28 was developed by the United States for World War II to break through German defenses at the Siegfried Line. Development started in 1944, but unfortunately by the time it was finished, the war had already ended. It had 12-inch thick armor on the front, a top speed of a whopping 8 miles per hour, and had a 105mm gun with a max range of up to 12 miles. It also had a secondary 50 cal machine gun on top of the turret of the tank. It was designed to demolish fortifications at range, not for tank-on-tank battle. The extreme weight of the tank was why the tank never saw further development. It could not cross any of the portable bridges at the time, and due to its low engine power, had extremely low ability to navigate even small obstacles. What is nuts about this specific tank here at the Tankodrome is that it is the only sole remaining version of this tank, and you can only find it here at the Tankodrome at Fort Moore. In 1974, this tank was discovered abandoned in a field at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, after which it was restored and then transported for our viewing pleasure. Alrighty, now before I say my number 1, some honorable mentions. First, I have the M50 Ontos, which was an exceptional anti-tank vehicle used by the United States Marines in Vietnam, with 6 M40 recoilless rifles on its turret. It was reported that the sight of this thing by the North Vietnamese was enough to force a withdrawal. Its main drawbacks, though, was its high profile, of course, and the need for the crew to exit the vehicle and expose themselves to fire in order to reload. The next honorable mention that I have is the Swedish Stradisvagen 103C. I'm sure I butchered that pronunciation. I'm including it in here because of just how cool it looks. It's actually not classified as a tank destroyer, despite its looks, and was designed for tank-on-tank combat. The slat armor that you see at its front is a defense feature to cause incoming tank rounds to detonate prematurely. Since it's Swedish, it has actually never seen combat. Next, I have to mention the Lockheed XM808 Twister. Just look at how this thing looks. This armored car vehicle was developed on the Army's path to develop the Bradley that is currently in use today. It's an armored car that was to be used as a scouting vehicle with the unique ability to bend its forward half to aid in off-road maneuverability. However, due to maintenance concerns, only 2 prototypes were ever made. Lastly, I gotta mention that this place has a really good German Panzer IV that's in good condition and has its left side cut open so you can completely see into the turret and also visually see how thick the armor was for this tank. Without further ado, my number 1 tank at the Tankodrome was the Abrams Block 3 Tank Test Bed, otherwise known as the TTB. This is another tank where you take one look at it and you say, what the heck is that thing? The development on the TTB actually began after the M1 Abrams was coming off the production lines in the 1980s. It was meant to be a further technological advancement for the Abrams after the M1A2. What makes this design unique is the absence of a crew in the turret. The 3-man crew would all sit side by side in the hull of the tank to increase their survivability. The main gun would have an autoloader with the ammo being stored and pulled directly underneath in the hull, which you can see in this animation that I pulled from the Red Wrench Films YouTube channel video on this tank. Despite having over 40,000 rounds cycled through the autoloader on the Abrams TTB without any jams or failures, production of this prototype was not pursued, more than likely due to concerns of the autoloader being damaged in combat and then not having another option to shoot the main gun of the tank. The reason why my jaw dropped at this, at seeing the Abrams TTB here, and I had to choose this tank as my number one, is because of what the future of the Abrams tank currently is in the United States Army, which is the Abrams X. It's essentially a more fleshed out modern version of this same tank that the Army currently has in development and is planning on producing. This prototype also shows that the Russian T-14 Armata, which first appeared in 2015, was not the first tank to have a crewless turret, and that the United States had already developed the idea in the 1980s. Essentially, the Army is showing that they think now the disadvantages of having a crewless turret for the Abrams can now be mitigated with the technology of today. Or I think that's what they think. I don't know. Well, anyways, thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and most importantly, have a nice day.
Sir, want an apple?
Yeah, thanks.